Well, we discovered a little bit more on the ins and outs of buying a house, transferring the title to one's name, and in our in our experience it doesn't get any easier, so you've got to be ready for it. I do think you have to be ready for it to be difficult, not impossible, but I think the one thing that people that foreigners encounter when they come and they try to do something, which if they did it in their own country might be, let's say, not any easier but just more predictable. I've said before how, for instance, I always said when I was describing how Beth and I got married that it took I'm sure that it was between 2 and 3 months, and it was just unpredictable. You just never seemed to know how you stood. And a very common thing to happen was that after waiting in line for, perhaps a long time, you would finally get to see the person at the desk, and they would have their questions, and you would answer as best you could, and you would have all the documents that you believed would be needed. Now, I've said before, whenever anybody has asked me what should I bring if I want to get married, and I've said just bring everything. Just everything. Anything that has your name on for something that you've done, bring it. Because if you bring it and you don't need it, well, that's fine, isn't it? But if you haven't thought that you would need it, then it's a struggle. I didn't have my decree nisi. I didn't have the whole thing, several pages. And when we got there, I had a court document, a certificate stating from the court that I was divorced. No, that wasn't enough. They wanted to see the whole decree, the whole thing. So then I had inconvenience and hassle and extra expense, because don't forget, if you're here, you're living in pesos, but as soon as you get used to that, anything that costs dollars can be something of a shock. So I remember that I had to get in touch with someone to go along to the court for me and ask for a copy of the decree nisi, then to get it notarized, which is not such a big problem certainly in the States, because you can go into your bank and get something notarized, because they always have someone working in the bank, an official, who would be able to do notary, and they do it for nothing. Not that costs a lot, but then to send that back in a timely way, you would have to go to FedEx, who would promise to get it back the next day or close to it, and so that costs money. And as I say, if you are already in the pesos mindset, when things cost dollars, it's times 55. Now, strangely, that figure of 55 is, sorry, I'm driving a little bit quickly, and the road is bumpy. So what we were told, just to recap, in case, let me get my belt on so it stops singing to me. Yeah, so we were told on the transfer tax for transferring a piece of property to your name, right, would cost 55, this is what we were told, 55 times the value of 1 square meter. One square meter was what they would charge you. So do the math, you know, if you have something in mind. Now since then, the people at the land office have said, now here's the most recent transfer that has been done in the last few days. So that's in the last few days now, and it was for a piece of property that was 1.8 hectares, and the tax that had to be paid to the BIR, the tax people, was 286, definitely 280,000. So that's an actual example of what they've have actually charged, not what they say they're going to charge, but the done deal. So now we've discovered again, we had a phone call from the lady that's handling this for us, and she is saying that what's happening in the BIR, now this is anecdotal information, okay, but what she has found, she's made several trips to the BIR, and what they are apparently doing, and you can put your own interpretation on why they would do this, but I'll give you my spin on it in a moment. They are transferring people around a lot. So the person that you speak to today and arrange to come in and see next week may not be there, or may be at a totally different post. Now why would they do that? You would think that they would want people who were very experienced in that particular post with those particular details, so that you would have the best service possible. Well, they're not doing that. Now, when we first started to work with the police, we got to know the chief of police in Atafi. We got to know him very well in a short time, because we did a lot of feed-ins where we went and helped people in very poor barangays and gave them a meal. Also, we were building a lot of houses back then, and the chief there was giving us, sorry, I'm looking at what's happening. I'm on the road down to the main highway. Yeah, the chief there was giving us volunteers of officers from the force, and they were coming up, and in the last few days of building the house, whoever the house was for, somebody poor, homeless, in need of a house, they would send as many as 10 officers down, and they would paint or dig or do anything, and with enthusiasm. They actually did help with the work. So we got to know the police chief. Now, very soon it was a new police chief, and so our friend, the police chief, was transferred to Tagbilaran, and then the new police chief was, if he was there 3 months, I would be surprised. And the whisper was that in this way they were clamping right down on possible corruption. So in other words, you couldn't go to your friend, the police chief, and tell him that you wanted some action squashed or done. You didn't have a friend in the police chief. Well, we quickly made friends with all of the ones that came through, and that amounted to, I think, 3 or 4. And then in Atafi, that was in Atafi, and in Tagbilaran, in Taliban, it was the same. Several, 2 or 3, or maybe 4, maybe on their 4th now, and they do that so that there's no familiarity and friendships and relationships built, which might only lead to some kind of corruption or collusion. So evidently they're doing that at the BIR, because if they're swapping people around at the BIR, why would they do that? And the possibility is that it's to stop the possibility of corruption. Boy, I wish they'd do that at the DSWD as well. We might get some action done. We're still waiting for our approval on, God, about the 6th application of our solicitation permit for the Philippines. We are free to solicit funds from wherever we like in the world, except for the Philippines, which is, isn't it ironic, which is where we are helping people. So that's been a thorn in our side. But we're hoping early next year, which is almost upon us, that should be at an end. But we've been functioning anyway. But it is what it would enable us to do would be to go to companies and ask them if they would say sponsor, say three students, and they'd sponsor the 3 students, and that would be their gift or their donation, their help. And then they would know the students, and they'd know how they were getting on. They would see their scores, and it could be a win-win situation all around. But anyway, we'll expect to achieve that next month. I don't know, January, February, March. I think there's some new stuff coming up, and that may make some changes in our present application. It's one of those things. So back to the BIR. That's what's happening there. And so the last person that our contact, our representative, spoke to, they needed 2. It doesn't matter what they are, does it? They needed 2 pieces of paper specifying A, B, C. And now the next one in is demanding more than that. So it's back again, get some more staff, take it in there, hope that now we're with someone who doesn't look like what they want 4 or 5. And unfortunately, when it comes to paperwork, that is life in the Philippines. So expect delays. Having said that, when I posted a video about how it had taken us 2 to 3 months to get our marriage and to be married, someone wrote in and said, "No, Terence, you're wrong. You know, I came over, my fiance had done some of the groundwork, but we attended the seminars, and we were married. 2 weeks later, we were on our honeymoon." So it just depends on the day and the time, whether it's before or after lunch. I don't know. Murphy's Law. If you fear something, it's bound to happen. And when you go and you're hoping against hope that there won't be any problems, Murphy steps in and attends to your fear. I'll talk to you later. Bye.